Money changes everything. That's what my dad always said when I was growing up. But I never truly understood what he meant until the day my mother died and left me her life insurance policy. I was 24 when it happened. One minute I was a normal young woman working an entry-level marketing job, living in a cramped apartment with 2 roommates, and the next I was a millionaire. Mom had been smart with her investments, smarter than any of us knew. The policy was worth $2.8 million. Dad took it hard when she passed. For months, he barely left the house, barely spoke to anyone. I'd bring him groceries, make sure he ate, try to get him to join the land of the living again. Then he met Victoria. Victoria swept into our lives like a hurricane in designer heels. She was everything my mother wasn't. Loud, flashy, obsessed with status. She was also 15 years younger than my father and worked as a luxury real estate agent. "Your father needs someone to take care of him," she'd say, rearranging the furniture my mother had picked out. "And this house needs a woman's touch." I bit my tongue every time she said things like that. After all, Dad was smiling again, leaving the house, seeming more like his old self. If Victoria made him happy, I could learn to live with her constant jabs and subtle put-downs. Then came the day Dad announced they were getting married. "Isn't it wonderful, Sophie?" He beamed, holding Victoria's hand across the dinner table. "We're going to start a whole new chapter." Victoria's smile was all teeth. "And of course, we'll need a new house to start our new life. Something more suitable." Her eyes swept dismissively around my childhood home, the home my mother had lovingly decorated over 20 years. I should have seen it coming. Within a week, Victoria had convinced Dad to list our house. "The market is hot right now," she argued, "and I've found the perfect place for us." The perfect place turned out to be Oakwood Manor, a sprawling colonial revival mansion in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. Victoria had been trying to sell it for months without success. The price tag of $3.2 million was steep even for that area. "But with your father's savings and the money from this house," she explained, gesturing around my childhood home, "we can almost make it work. We'll just need a small mortgage." I watched Dad nodding along, completely under her spell, and felt my stomach turn. He'd worked so hard his whole life, saved so carefully, and now Victoria was going to burn through it all for a house neither of them could really afford. "Dad," I tried one evening when Victoria wasn't around, "are you sure about this? The maintenance costs alone on a house that size." "Sophie," he cut me off, his voice gentle but firm. "I know what I'm doing. Victoria knows the real estate market. She says this is a solid investment." I wanted to scream that Victoria only knew how to spend money, not save it. That the commission she'd make on selling both houses was clearly clouding her judgment. Instead, I just nodded and kept my concerns to myself. The wedding planning started immediately. Victoria threw herself into it with the same excessive enthusiasm she brought to everything else. No expense was spared. The most expensive venue, the fanciest caterers, the works. "It's going to be the event of the season," she'd gush during our forced family dinners. "Everyone who's anyone will be there." Then came the day she dropped her bomb. "Sophie, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "about the wedding. I know you're expecting to be part of the bridal party." I wasn't. I'd made no such assumptions. "But I've already promised those spots to my nieces. They're much closer to my age, you understand, and they'll look so much better in the photos." I kept my face carefully neutral. "That's fine, Victoria. I understand." "Oh, good." She clapped her hands together. Because I do have a role for you. You can attend if you serve drinks." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Dad, who usually let Victoria's jabs slide, looked uncomfortable. "Victoria," he started, but she waved him off. "Oh, don't look at me like that. Sophie's always going on about wanting to help, wanting to be involved. Well, this is how she can help. We're short a server, and it would save us some money." I could feel Dad watching me, waiting to see how I'd react. Victoria was smirking, clearly expecting me to refuse, to cause a scene that would paint me as the difficult one yet again. Instead, I smiled. "Of course I'll help. Whatever you need." The look of disappointment that flashed across her face was almost worth the humiliation she was trying to inflict. What Victoria didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd been watching her carefully these past months. I'd seen her showing Oakwood Manor to potential buyers, watched her growing increasingly desperate as each offer fell through. I'd overheard her phone calls about carrying 2 mortgages, about needing this sale to close. Most importantly, I'd noticed how her eyes lit up every time she walked through that house. It wasn't just a commission to her, it was her dream home, the one thing she wanted more than anything else. And thanks to my mother's final gift, I had the power to take it away from her. The next morning, I made a call to my own real estate agent. It was time to make some dreams come true and shatter others into a million expensive pieces. Marcus Green, my real estate agent, looked at me like I'd lost my mind when I told him my plan. "Let me get this straight," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You want to buy Oakwood Manor, the same house your soon-to-be stepmother has listed, and you want to do it through a shell company, so she doesn't know it's you." "Exactly." I pulled out the folder I'd prepared. "Here's proof of funds, pre-approval from the bank, though I won't need it. I can pay cash." His eyebrows shot up as he reviewed the documents. "Sophie, are you sure about this? It's a lot of money to spend on revenge." "It's not just revenge," I argued, though we both knew that was a lie. "It's a sound investment. The property values in that neighborhood have increased 15% annually for the past 5 years. Marcus sighed but started typing on his computer. "All right, let's set up Brighton Holdings LLC. It'll take a few days to get everything in order. But Sophie," he looked at me seriously, "Victoria Carter is one of the top luxury real estate agents in the city. She's going to be furious when she realizes what happened." I smiled. That's the point. The next few weeks were a careful dance of deception. While Victoria wrapped herself in wedding details, I was quietly orchestrating the biggest purchase of my life. Marcus set up meetings with the sellers, making sure they never crossed paths with Victoria's showing schedule. "They're getting desperate," he reported after one meeting. 3 failed deals have them worried. They're willing to take $3 million if we can close quickly. I wrote the check that same day, hands shaking slightly as I signed away more money than I'd ever imagined having. But every time I doubted myself, I remembered Victoria's smirk when she told me to serve drinks at her wedding. Meanwhile, the wedding preparations continued. Victoria dragged Dad to endless tastings, fittings, and planning sessions. I watched his savings account dwindle as she insisted on premium everything. "The flowers alone cost more than my first car," he confided one evening, looking worried for the first time. "And now with the house." "The house?" I kept my voice casual. "Has something happened?" He sighed heavily. "Victoria's having trouble selling it. She was counting on that commission to help with the wedding costs. Now she's talking about taking out a second mortgage on our current house to cover everything." My blood boiled. She was going to drain him dry before they even said, "I do." The day before the wedding, Victoria called a final rehearsal at the venue, some overpriced country club she'd chosen. I arrived early, dressed in the server's uniform she'd insisted I wear. "Oh, good you're here," she said, barely glancing at me. "The other servers will show you what to do. Just try not to embarrass me." I spent the next hour learning drink service protocols while Victoria practiced her entrance for the 1,000th time. Her nieces, all perfectly coiffed and coordinated, simpered and praised her every move. "She's going to look amazing tomorrow," one of them gushed, especially in their new house. Victoria preened. "Yes, Oakwood Manor. Did I mention it was featured in Architectural Digest? The crown moldings alone. If you can sell it," another niece said innocently. Victoria's face darkened. "Of course I'll sell it. I have interested buyers. Very interested buyers." I took back a smile. Those interested buyers had just signed the final paperwork an hour ago under the name Brighton Holdings LLC. That night, I could barely sleep. Not because of the wedding, but because of what would happen after. My lawyer had confirmed everything was ready. The timing would be perfect. The next morning dawned bright and clear. I arrived at the country club early, helping set up the bar as Victoria had demanded. She swept in hours later, already in her wedding dress, a monstrosity of tulle and crystals that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Sophie," she barked, "make sure you keep my champagne glass full during the reception. And for heaven's sake, try to stay out of the photos." "Yes, Victoria," I said meekly, straightening my server's bowtie. "Whatever you need." The ceremony itself was beautiful, I'll give her that. Dad looked happy, if a bit overwhelmed, as he said his vows. I stood in the back, tray of champagne flutes balanced carefully, watching Victoria promise to love and cherish him. But it was during the reception that things really got interesting. Victoria, several glasses of champagne in, was holding court at the main table. "And wait until you see the house," she was saying to anyone who would listen. The marble foyer, the grand staircase. I knew the moment I saw it that it was meant to be mine. If only she knew how wrong she was. At exactly 11:55 p.m., I saw my lawyer slip into the reception hall, right on schedule. He caught my eye and gave a slight nod. It was time. I watched my lawyer, James Patterson, make his way through the crowd. He was carrying a sleek leather briefcase, the kind that screamed expensive legal documents inside. Victoria, ever attuned to displays of wealth, noticed him immediately. "Can I help you?" she called out, her professional real estate agent smile sliding into place. "Mrs. Carter Reynolds?" James asked formally, using her brand-new married name. "I have some documents regarding Oakwood Manor that require your immediate attention." Victoria's face lit up. She'd been drinking champagne all night, celebrating not just her wedding, but also her apparent triumph. "Oh, has someone made an offer?" "Actually," James said, pulling out a thick envelope, "the house has already been sold. These are the final executed documents. The new owners wanted you to have them, as a wedding gift." The color drained from Victoria's face. "What?" "That's impossible. I'm the listing agent. All offers have to go through me." "Not when the buyers work directly with the seller's agent," James replied smoothly. "Brighton Holdings LLC closed on the property this morning. All cash offer, no contingencies. The deed has already been recorded." Victoria snatched the envelope, her perfectly manicured hands shaking as she ripped it open. Around her, the wedding guests had gone quiet, sensing the drama unfolding. 3 million, she whispered, scanning the documents. They accepted 3 million, but I had it listed at 3.2. The sellers were motivated, James said diplomatically, and Brighton Holdings was ready to close immediately. Brighton Holdings? Dad spoke up from beside Victoria. Who are they? This was my cue. I set down my tray of champagne glasses and stepped forward, pulling out my own copy of the deed from my server's apron. That would be me, I said clearly. The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria's head snapped up, her eyes meeting mine with a mixture of shock and dawning horror. You, she choked out. But how? Remember my mother's life insurance policy? I kept my voice steady, professional. Turns out she left me more than enough to buy my dream home. Though I have to thank you, Victoria. You were right about those crown moldings. They really are spectacular. Victoria's face went from white to red so fast I worried she might faint. You little. She started to lunge forward, but Dad caught her arm. Victoria, he said sharply. What's going on? She spun to face him. Darling, she's trying to ruin our wedding. She's bought our house out from under us out of spite. Your house? I raised an eyebrow. But Victoria, you didn't own it. You were just the listing agent. And now, I smiled, channeling her own saccharine sweetness. You're not even that. One of her nieces gasped. Another started giggling nervously. Victoria looked like she might explode. You can't do this, she hissed. We had plans. The renovations. Our future. Actually, James interjected, as the new owner, Ms. Wilson has full authority to do whatever she wishes with the property, including, he paused meaningfully, terminating any existing purchase agreements. Dad was looking between us, his wedding day joy replaced by confusion and growing understanding. The money, he said slowly. Victoria, you said we had enough for the down payment. We did, she insisted, once I got my commission from the sale, and if we took out a second mortgage, and maybe borrowed against your retirement. I watched my father's face as the full picture of Victoria's financial plan became clear. She'd been counting on bleeding him dry to fund her dream lifestyle. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice cutting through Victoria's increasingly desperate explanations. I'm moving into Oakwood Manor next week. You two can stay in our family home. The one Mom and Dad built together. The one you were so eager to sell. I turned to my father. Dad, I've set up a trust to maintain the house. It's yours for life. No matter what. Victoria can't touch it. You can't do this to me, Victoria whispered, but the fight was draining from her voice. Not today. Not at my wedding. Actually, I smiled, straightening my server's body one last time. I think serving you these papers is the perfect end to my serving duties. Would you like another glass of champagne with them? The reception fell apart pretty quickly after that. Victoria's nieces huddled in a corner, furiously texting everyone they knew. The other guests made polite excuses and left early. Dad sat at a table with his head in his hands, the weight of his new wife's deception finally sinking in. Victoria herself disappeared into the bridal suite and refused to come out. A week later, I stood in the marble foyer of Oakwood Manor, my manor now, and watched the movers bring in my furniture. The crown moldings really were spectacular, but what I loved most was the garden. Mom would have loved it too. Dad came to see me that afternoon. He looked tired, but resolute. "Victoria's staying at her sister's," he said, accepting the coffee I offered. "She's not taking things well." "And you?" I asked carefully. "How are you taking things?" He was quiet for a long moment, looking around at the house that should have been his, if his new wife hadn't been so focused on appearances that she was willing to bankrupt him to maintain them. "I filed for an annulment this morning," he said finally. Turns out starting a marriage with massive financial deception is grounds for that. I reached across the kitchen island and squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry, Dad. Not about Victoria, but about ruining your wedding day." He squeezed back. "Don't be. You saved me from making a very expensive mistake. Your mother," he smiled sadly, "she would have been proud of how you handled it, though maybe not of the dramatic timing." I laughed. Mom always did say I had a flair for the theatrical. "Listen," Dad said, growing serious, "about the family house. It's yours." I cut him off. "Like I said, I've put it in a trust. You can live there as long as you want. Victoria can't touch it, and neither can any future adventures in romance." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "Thank you, Sophie, for everything." After he left, I walked through my new house, all 8,000 square feet of it. The grand staircase that Victoria had coveted, the gourmet kitchen she planned to remodel, the master suite she dreamed of sleeping in. It was all mine now. I thought about her face when she realized what I'd done, the way her perfect wedding dissolved into chaos. Maybe it was petty of me to do it that way, to wait until her big moment to serve the papers. But then I remembered her smirk when she handed me that server's uniform, her casual cruelty in trying to humiliate me on what should have been a day of family celebration. Sometimes revenge is best served with a champagne chaser. 2 days later, a large envelope arrived from Victoria's real estate office. Inside was a single sheet of paper, her final commission statement for Oakwood Manor, showing a big fat 0. I had it framed and hung it in my new home office, right below the crown moldings she'd loved so much. As for the server's uniform, I had it bronzed and turned into a sculpture for my garden, a little reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't just about winning, it's about serving it with style. Money changes everything. That's what my dad always said when I was growing up, but I never truly understood what he meant until the day my mother died and left me her life insurance policy. I was 24 when it happened. One minute I was a normal young woman working an entry-level marketing job, living in a cramped apartment with 2 roommates, and the next I was a millionaire. Mom had been smart with her investments, smarter than any of us knew. The policy was worth $2.8 million. Dad took it hard when she passed. For months, he barely left the house, barely spoke to anyone. I'd bring him groceries, make sure he ate, try to get him to join the land of the living again. Then he met Victoria. Victoria swept into our lives like a hurricane in designer heels. She was everything my mother wasn't. Loud, flashy, obsessed with status. She was also 15 years younger than my father and worked as a luxury real estate agent. "Your father needs someone to take care of him," she'd say, rearranging the furniture my mother had picked out. "And this house needs a woman's touch." I bit my tongue every time she said things like that. After all, Dad was smiling again, leaving the house, seeming more like his old self. If Victoria made him happy, I could learn to live with her constant jabs and subtle put-downs. Then came the day Dad announced they were getting married. "Isn't it wonderful, Sophie?" He beamed, holding Victoria's hand across the dinner table. "We're going to start a whole new chapter." Victoria's smile, was all teeth. And of course, we'll need a new house to start our new life. Something more suitable.